Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you quickly how to properly scale things and how you can add an image to something. So there's two different ways to do this. I downloaded this image of Super Mario. Just did it right here. Just Google searched Super Mario images, and then I just right-clicked and saved the image as. And when you do that, you should be able to download it. You can name it whatever you want. So I've already done that, and then I have my Unreal Engine project open here. So the first way you can do this is if I bring a cube out, this is a basic static mesh, you can simply take the picture and then put it on there. Now this might take a second or two to produce this image. Mine did it quickly because I did it before I started this video, and it created this material, so it'll automatically create that material. And so you can also, if you have the material created, you can drag it and drop it right into your materials over here, and it'll add it. Now, if you go to your scale, you can do this one of two ways. You can scale it over here. If you hit this lock box, this little lock here, you will scale it. So it does, sorry, when you hit this lock, it'll do X, Y, and Z all at the same rate. If you have this lock off, you can stretch one of them, whichever way you want. So this is going on the X. So you can see in the X is the red, so it's stretching it in the X axis. If I stretch it on the Y, it's going to stretch it that way. But you can see how it stretches the character. So typically you're going to want to keep this at, one and a half. You're going to want to have it all to be the same scale. So if you're going to do that, unless you're purposely going for a stretch look for some reason, you're going to want to do that. Okay, so that's with the static mesh. Now, the next part is really important because if you're using your geometry, you're going to pull this in, it's going to do it differently. Now, it already added it on there because I had the Super Mario material highlighted, so let's do it different. Geometry. So here's our box. And then I put the material on there, and now you can see how it added to each quadrant. So it's going to add it to this darker gray area, then in the lighter gray area. So each one of these quadrants is a separate image. Now, if you stretch it, it's going to stretch it. If you use the scale button, I should say, it will stretch the material. So when I say this is how you don't want to scale your geometry, that's the reason why. So if you were to have a different, like if you were to have something that's tiled, this is tiled technically, but if you were to have maybe bricks or wood for your walls, and if you scale it this way, it's going to stretch it just like that. So that's why when you're in geometry mode, it's G4 and 426. I'm sorry, it's Shift 4 and 4.26, and it's Shift 5 and all the other versions. I don't know why they changed it. But you want to go into geometry mode and then use your transform, and then it'll add it. I'm just going to change the scale to 100. So now you can see it's going to tile it properly so it doesn't stretch your tiles. So let's see, so let's do this. Take this image of this brick, save it, and just name it brick. I'll name it brick material. And what you can do, take that brick material and just drag and drop it. I did the same thing with the Super Mario. I just took my image and just dragged and dropped it right in there. I'll grab a different box. Go into my place mode. Attach it. Material brick created. See, so it just took a minute, and then it created the material. And now on this one, you can see that's the one difference. It'll only tile one side. There is a way to wrap it. It doesn't always work for me though. But that's not what I'm worried about right now. So, because typically you're only going to tile, a lot of times only one side, the side that the room's on. So You don't want to tile the whole thing if it's not going to be seen. But if I scale it this way, you can see how it stretches each block. So that's what you don't want. So that's why when you put your material on a geometry, go into your geometry editing mode, use your transform, make sure your scale's on. Just that way it'll help snap it better. If you take that off, it'll still work. But you definitely want to do things with the snap. So that's how you're going to properly tile things. Now what you could do, one way you could do it to make it easy, or not easy, but a simple way to, you can just drag and drop it on the sides that you need it. Like, all right, and that's how you properly tile things. So I'm going to do this real quick. So let's say, so this floor is a static mesh actor. Remember, geometry is not a static mesh. You can make it a static mesh though. All right. So what happened there was I've got my material selected down here. And so when I pull out the box, it automatically does it, and it's automatically wrapped, as you can see, which is good. And that's fine. Don't worry about it if it is all the way wrapped. So you can just do that. And then you can easily build your walls. And I'm going to take this in, go there. And so this will make it so no matter what size you make it, it's still going to look proper. Then I'll duplicate it. And then I'm going to duplicate it again. And what's nice about this is it's a lot easier to get it to snap together. So now I got it snapped, right? Now let's say I want just these 3 walls, and then I only have so much computer power to use, and so let's say your program's starting to slow down because you have way too much stuff in there. What you can do if you're using geometry, because geometry takes more processing power, is you can change these to static mesh. Now once you change them to static mesh, how they are is how they're going to be. What I mean by that is if you try to start stretching it and stuff as a geometry, or I'm sorry, as a basic static mesh cube, it's going to act a little different. So you won't be able to edit it this way anymore. You won't be able to grab the corner and just bring like one corner down if that's something you want to do. So just remember, you have more control over the geometry, but it also takes up more computing space. So what you can do is right here under brush settings, hit that little down arrow, and then you can hit create static mesh. And then you could say, I want this to be my brick wall, and it'd be a good idea to put the size, so it's 200 by 200. You could put 200 by 200 by 200 if you really wanted to, whatever you feel like doing. And then you can create other folders here, and we'll do that in a second. So now this is a static mesh. So you see I click on it, and I'm in geometry brush editing mode, and I can't do anything with it. I can do it to this wall now. I can still control that one, but I can't control this one. But now this one will cost less processing power. But if you stretch it, it's going to stretch the tiles too. So see the difference in size. So that's the major difference between the 2 different scales. So when you're doing geometry, this is the way you want to scale, because it'll tile it nicely. All right, that's the end of this video, I believe. Unless there's one more thing. Oh, you know what? Just for good habit, when you do things like this, start creating folders. I'm going to create a materials folder. If I can type. So anything that says, really, this one's not a material. So I'm going to change that name. It's a texture. And you can tell it's a texture if you just, number one, it's got that red line underneath it. It's easier to see under Mario right here. And then if you look up, I can't move my cursor obviously, but if you look up to where it says Super Mario up at the top, you can see in parentheses it says texture, and then you have all your other information. You got the dimensions, and so a lot of that stuff will be useful, especially if you are a modeler. You're going to want to know specific dimensions so you can model appropriately. But what we're going to do is take these materials that have the green line, and same thing in the parentheses, you'll see material at the top. And then just move. We're just gonna move that here, and you can copy it. And if you copy it, then you'll have one in this area, and then one in the folder. But I'm just gonna move it. So I'm gonna move all materials there, and then let's create another folder for textures. And then move your textures into that one. And this is a static mesh. Can't have spaces, so it'll give you a warning if you do that. As you can see, once again, static mesh up at the top right of this little box in parentheses. Move that in there. Okay. And then one other thing you're going to want to do is naming conventions. Let's do it this way. Standard naming convention is going to be this. Underscore for material. I should have done that immediately, but I was just trying to do this really quick. And then for textures, T underscore. So this is the pretty standard naming convention. And static mesh, just SM underscore. So that's good for a couple things. You can obviously search for static mesh here if you want, and it'll pull up your static mesh. Or this way, if you have a bunch of them and you just want to find them, you could search static mesh. All right. Thank you very much.